to the interview room. Muzzy checking in, the time's here. How you all doing? Alright, let's begin. Let's have a chat about the fact that I wanna interview the best fighters in the world, and that's that. Had a lot of guests from everywhere, all across the globe. Fighters tell me about the journeys, training, fighting on the road. It's Muay Thai, get it straight. Here to show respect to great fighters around the world. Ask questions and investigate the lives of great warriors, revered and notorious, infamous and...
Alrightio, it's been a while, but Mudsy's back, and I'm here with the talk of the town, Damon Nelson, the new Australian WBC champion at welterweight. How are you, mate? How's it going?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me on, Mudsy. It's good to see you.
Thanks for your time, mate. Now that you've had a week for it to all sink in, this time last week you were probably just about to step in the ring. How does it feel? And now how have you processed the entire thing?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it's crazy. It's already been 1 week. It's gone in the blink of an eye. And then to be fair, the whole fight camp was like that. So I've said it to a couple of people, I can't believe it's already fight week. And next thing you know, it was fight day, and then I was in ring. So a lot of fighters know that's how it goes. It happens all so fast. But honestly, I'm still stoked. I'm over the moon, to be honest. I put so much work and after training, and then just to have it pay off, it's rewarding. It's really rewarding.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So how did the fight come about? What were you doing when you got the call up or the message saying, do you want to fight Albert for the Australian WBC title?
Well, as far as I know, so I mean, my old man, he's coach, he's manager, he organises all the fights. So as far as I know, it was happened a few months back. I think Chris, the promoter of Destiny, he wanted to get it on a little while ago, but COVID got in the way of it, and as it has with a lot of things, like war on the shore today, unfortunately, it's just been an absolute pain in the neck. But it was meant to happen a little while ago, and we finally got the chance, and it all went ahead. So we've had our eye on that belt and on out for a little while, because he's created quite a name for himself. He's a tough opponent, so it's something that we're looking forward to for quite some time.
And how was the preparation for that fight? How long was your training camp?
Well, yeah, it was quite a long one, because I was actually training up for Grand Prix. So I was meant to fight Barry Oliver on Grand Prix. So I was training up for him, and then on Domination, when unfortunately got caught. So that was, I think, 3 weeks before Domination now, if I'm not wrong. But yeah. So that fell through, but we just essentially kept going, kept training. Just kept steam rolling for Albert, essentially. So we kept training, and essentially it ended up being a longer prep than normal, but it all paid off. So yeah, it was. I don't know if I was doing more training than usual, but I picked up an extra couple of morning runs and that sort of thing, just to help with cardio, and I guess it helps with weight a bit too. But so essentially, the training schedule, you end up training 1, 2. Oh God, I'm going to count it all out now. 3, 5, 6. So it's about 7 times a week, but amongst that, they're including your morning runs if you want to count them.
Yeah.
But amongst that, then I've got a recovery session as well, and 1 day off as well. So, something like a Monday, it would just be, you wake up, you do your morning runs. So 2 of my morning runs of the week, I was going for sub 4s, we call it. So you just pretty much run flat chat and try and get less than 4 minutes to a kilometre. So that's just essentially about pushing the pace and maintaining that push for at least 4 kilometres. So that's about intensity. And then, that afternoon, we got our training. So it's our drills. I go for another run, but it's a bit lighter. It's more of a warm-up run in the afternoon, and then come back, shadow box, do the usual, and then do all your drills on the bags and hit pads and do strength work, and that's your standard Monday.
Yep.
And then essentially we copy that on a Wednesday, do that same thing Wednesday afternoon, and then Thursday morning I do my same sub 4 run. Thursday afternoon is our dedicated strength and conditioning class. So that's something that we've been doing for a long time now. It's quite a high intensity, so just 35-second runs with 10-second breaks. You know, it's all about the intent and pushing the pace.
Yep.
But yeah, so they're a shorter session on your Thursday afternoon, and then Friday nights are our sparring night. So we get a lot of our sparring, clinch in as well. Oh, we clinch earlier in the week too, but we do a bit more on a Friday night, and then I put in some kilometers on Saturday morning. I was probably doing, well, kilometers for me is about 7 or 8, so I was probably doing about 7 or 8K, and then training again on Sunday morning. So yeah, it'll fit it all in around work.
No days off for you, mate. And
No.
I just want to go back to when you mentioned strength and conditioning. What sort of strength and conditioning program do you implement or is implemented for you?
Well, we do it as a class.
Yeah.
So we all tend to do similar exercises, but with different weights depending on obviously different size people throughout the gym. But we do. Well, it all sort of it changes regularly. Mm-hmm. But say to give you a rough idea, you know, we've got deadlifts in there, and are you familiar with the ab wheel? That's a bit of a classic.
Yep.
And then you got goblet squats, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, goblet squats and kettlebell swings, and oh god, what else we got in there? We actually Dad put some pads on as well. We pump out some kicks.
Yep.
So there's just your power kicks, as well as sort of sets for as many as you can get because they're quick rounds. And then we've got a bit of posterior strength work as well. So a few exercises that look a bit quirky, a bit hard to explain, but essentially like hip raises and that sort of thing. And, you know, just a lot of the muscles that we don't tend to work as much in Muay Thai. So it's tried to cover quite a broad aspect of all the different areas, really. Yeah,
definitely. And the first question, well, we're starting with the second one now, but the first one I usually like to start with everyone is, how did you get into Muay Thai? Because pretty much your whole family is involved in the sport, and you obviously grew up with it.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, Mum and Dad have been involved since before I was born. So they were, I think they actually met at local Muay Thai gym back, you know, long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've kind of been around it for my whole life. But as a kid, you know, I wasn't as committed as I am now. So like most kids, you know, you don't tend to take it as seriously. I didn't start fighting until I was 14. Yeah, I was 14 when I had my first fight. So it's almost 8 years now that I've been competing.
Yeah.
But I didn't start, you know, training hard and doing proper Muay Thai training under Dad. Even I didn't start until I was probably like 11 or 12. So,
and what made you decide to start taking it a little bit more serious, or to take that next step and go from just training to having your first fight, and then, you know, it snowballed from there, obviously, with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess as I was younger, because I was always around it, I didn't take as much notice to it. But then as I started to get a bit older, I kind of thought, oh, you know, hey, that's pretty cool. And I went to a couple more fight shows, and I seen the guys that were training with Dad, and then I seen him put it to work in the ring. And then I just, I guess I got a bit excited and asked Dad about fighting, and he wanted me to wait till I was 14. just as a bit of a maturity thing.
Yeah.
But you know, as soon as I turned 14, I think it was probably 2 months later, I had my first fight, and I've just been fighting ever since.
Because you've got two brothers, a twin one and a younger one, and they've both had fights as well.
Yeah, they have actually. So my twin brother, well, actually, I think my little brother's had just as many fights, but so Jet is, well, if you want to be technical, he's the older twin of the two. He's older by 4 minutes, but yeah, he's I think they've had about 8 fights. Now I think about it, Jet's had one out of pads. He fought David Davies a few years back now on Futures down in Mandurah. But he hasn't fought since then. It's been a little while. But I think he will. I think he will fight again. It's just a matter of finding his rhythm.
Yep.
But he'll jump back in the ring for sure.
Yeah, because I actually watched that fight with him against that guy from Champions, and I think the guy from Champions was a lot older. But watching that fight, technically your brother looked technically your brother looked a lot better. I think the guy who's fighting was about 30, so he just had that older man strength and got the win. But if you're looking at from an aesthetic point of view, it was much nicer to watch Jet in that fight.
Oh, thank you, mate. I'll tell him you said so. Actually, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was a nice fight to watch. Yeah, I saw him warming up, and he was getting in the zone. He was like doing some sprints up and down the hallway. So he looked like he was very focused for that.
He's a bit of a runner, Jet. Yeah.
Now, can you tell me the gym name Lanna, what it means, and why your dad called it that?
Yeah, well, going back to how I got involved, actually, when I was saying that mum and dad been involved in it for a long time. So when they went to Chiang Mai together before I was born, they went and trained at the local gym there in Chiang Mai called Lanna Muay Thai. That was in the Lanna Kingdom, if you're familiar with Thailand and Chiang Mai.
Yep.
But essentially, so that was the first Thai gym that they trained at. And when Dad come back, it was sort of, I'm not going to say unsettled, but he ended up kind of just finding his place as a trainer.
Yep.
And dedicated the name Lanna, I guess. So that was just a bit of a tribute to the gym that he's trained at, and the name stuck ever since. So essentially, we've taken on the Lanna Prestige. So we're the Lanna Muay Thai Australia.
Yeah, because I actually lived in Chiang Mai for about 7 years. Wow. That was run by the late Andy Thompson, I think it was. Sorry if I've
That's right.
got
Andy
got his name wrong. Yeah, passed away for a couple of years ago, which was pretty bad. I was in Chiang Mai at the time, so that was not good. But yeah, no, it's
yeah.
And speaking of Chiang Mai, you did a trip, I think. Last year or the year before, you went back to Thailand. You did some training, and you even fought and won a stadium belt in Chiang Mai. Tell us a bit about that and what else you got up to while you were there.
Yeah. So that was just before COVID, actually. We Shannon and I, we went together and we got back just in time. But yeah, that's right. So yeah, we were there for 1 month. So about 4 weeks, and we just committed that trip to training and fighting. So we wanted to get a couple of fights in. Shan was lucky to get a couple, which was awesome. She fought a Thai girl and knocked her out in the first round, I think it was, or maybe even the second round. So then they put her up against the local champ, and she actually took the Chiang Mai Stadium title for her weight as well. So that was a good fight too, and she knocked out the local champion in round 3. So she had a really successful trip. That was awesome. I actually got some weird injury in my shin on the way over. So it's a bit hard to explain, but the best way to explain it is I had some sort of encapsulated sort of foreign body. It might not have been a foreign body. It might have just been like a bone chip from a previous injury or something like that. But because the way my body had healed around it, it created this sort of scar tissue capsule. And the plane flight over, the pressure had burst it. So the toxins inside that capsule had just gone AWOL through my leg, and essentially from about halfway down my leg, probably right down through my foot, was all sort of red and swollen, which I thought was, I mean, as everyone would think, it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
But it was, super sensitive. So that was threw a spanner in the works, and I had to get some antibiotics, and took a few days off training. But once I got that sorted, we were still training hard. I didn't really kick with my left side, which was super weird for me, being left-footed.
Oh, really?
I kicked with it in the ring. Yeah. So that's, I'm Orthodox. I'm right-handed, so I think I throw a few people off that way.
Yeah.
But I'm left-footed, so I can use that left side, which comes in handy. But I didn't really kick with it much until I got in the ring, and then I just had to commit with it. You know what it's like. I think a lot of fighters know what it's like. It's just when you're in there, you just do what you have to do.
Worry about the pain.
It come good. No, it was. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So, but no, it was good. I was actually matched with Sugar at that point in time as well. I was due to fight Sugar a couple weeks after I got home. But because of my injury in my shin, it was really hard to sort of commit to that fight as well, because we weren't sure if the plane flight home was going to have the same effect and throw me out for another week or so.
Yeah.
So I had the choice of either fighting Sugar and not risking Chiang Mai and making my shin worse. So just trying to commit to the one at home, or I just fight in Chiang Mai and then pretty much see how I feel afterwards and commit to the one in Chiang Mai, and then fight Sugar when I got home.
Yep.
So we decided to do that. I'll just commit to the one in Chiang Mai, because, you're not in, well, not all of us, but we're not in Chiang Mai every day. So I wanted to absolutely seize that opportunity. But then we got home sort of just before the borders shut anyway. So Shannon and I did a couple of weeks isolation, and then that shut down Domination. So that fight never ended up happening anyway. But we made it back just in time. So we did the whole 2 weeks isolation and tried to train as much as we could at home. But
you must be getting quite experienced being in isolation, because you're in isolation now, aren't you, from your fight last week?
Oh, yeah, I am, mate, I am. And I think we've timed it pretty well too, because Queensland has just gotten into lockdown.
Yeah, mate, like you mentioned at the start, poor old Mark Peace and his promotional team and all the trainers, fighters, spectators, people that were going to buy tickets, it got cancelled. They weighed in last night and hours before the show.
I know, it could not happen on a worse day. Honestly, couldn't happen on a worse day. I feel all my condolences out to everyone.
Oh, I feel
involved in the show.
I feel absolutely gutted for Mark. So Mark, if you listen, mate, really sorry to hear that. I hope it gets back up. I suppose probably Darren, Tisha and Blair are probably treading on eggshells with Domination meant to be happening this time next Saturday. So, I mean, they've already had, I think...
Yeah, next weekend, yeah.
They've already had at least 3 Dominations being cancelled because of COVID. They had one cancelled the night before the weigh-in, then they had one cancelled the afternoon that weigh-in was meant to happen. So it's a pretty hectic time at the moment. And I am a little bit...
It is, yeah. It makes it hard for anyone to commit. So it just goes to show sort of how much time and effort, and you appreciate all the promoters that are putting shows on now for the fighters.
Oh, and yeah, you got to feel for the fighters, what must be going through their heads. They've trained, they've done the weigh-in thinking, yep, sweet, we're on tomorrow, and then bang, just get a curveball from left field. So, mate, you're really lucky that you fought last week and not this week or whenever, because who knows what may have happened.
Yeah, exactly right. Counting my blessings for sure.
And I will say, I'm a little bit disappointed, because I was hoping to see the Damon Nelson scissor kick special, but that didn't happen last week. So If you could,
No, I threw a few knees instead this time.
yeah, well, that worked out pretty well for you too.
yeah, that's right. We were working on a few other things this time.
Hey, when you were in Chiang Mai, how many times did you do the Doi Satep run?
Oh, we actually didn't run up Doisetep.
Oh, you're lucky.
We did a bit of the whole Falang thing and did a bit of touristing afterwards, and just went to Doisetep Temple, and then went to the zoo and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at that stage, all the camps had actually closed. So 3 days before we left, or were due to leave Chiang Mai, all the camps had closed. So this was just after we fought. I think it was the night after I won the title, actually. All the stadiums and all the camps closed up. So we just kind of took it as an opportunity and, rest up and had a little bit of a holiday for the last few days, and then went home and yeah.
Oh, mate. Well, you're lucky. Next time you have to endure that 11K run up a steep hill. It's magnificent. Said no one ever. Well, the view's good, but running up there is a bit of a
magnificent when you're done.
Yeah, when you're done, mate. If you can still stand and breathe, you're all right. You mentioned your partner, Shannon. Like, you went over. She's also a fighter. So I'm curious to find out, how do you guys help or deal with one another when one of you or both of you are in a fight camp, and what's it like watching the other one fight? How's the nerves?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it's really rewarding. So, I mean, it's a bit of give and take. Yeah. No, it's rewarding to see, because you see all the effort that goes in behind the scenes, and you see all the commitment and the dedication that goes into training, and just to watch her fight. I get super excited. I'm on the edge of my seat if I'm in my seat at all.
Yep.
So I think, you're watching her last fight when she fought Victoria. I was trying hard not to yell out at any instructions or anything from the crowd. that's Darren's job. But it's awesome. Yeah. And then just to be able to celebrate with her afterwards, and then she does the same for me. So essentially for this time, I had dedicated a lot of time to training, so it's all give and take. So just little things like, we want to eat at the right time. We don't want to eat too late. So just making sure you're home, and then you've got all your meal prep and all of that done. So making sure it's available, and just the little things like getting an early night sleep, and just being flexible and allowing them to, and myself to sort of just do all those little 1%ers that make a difference.
Well, it sounds like you got a good thing going there, because it can be quite a selfish thing, like being a fighter, because you've got to, you've obviously got you to look after, and you got your partner as well. So it seems like you've got that all planned out.
You are right. It's unfortunately, I mean, you don't always have to be selfish. There's a difference between being selfish and sort of being an arsehole, I guess. But it's just a matter of looking out for yourself and making sure that everything's on point and you're ready. But when your partner's a fighter too, then they understand that. So that helps for sure.
And one thing I've picked up, not only you, but a few of other fighters from your gym, is that a lot of you can fight out of either Orthodox or Southpaw stance, which allows you to change things up and keep the opponents guessing. Why do you think it's important to be able to do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you can switch up stance, it's a skill. I wouldn't consider myself someone who would comfortably sit Southpaw, but like I mentioned earlier, I'm actually left-footed, so I'm happy to use my left side a bit more often.
Yeah.
But to do so, I do sit Orthodox, and defensively I'll sit Orthodox. But then to attack, I'll switch to throw the left side, or I will use my right side and step through and set up or something like that to throw off my left side. But it's definitely an essential to be able to throw your shots off of both sides.
Yeah.
So I sit Orthodox, and I'm predominantly Orthodox, but I'm more than happy to use my left side. So,
because what I've really noticed is I really, really like your style, or what style your dad's putting out. Like it's Thai style, but it's very nice. And one thing I've noticed is it doesn't matter whether whether they're having a fighter who's having their first fight or someone like you who's had heaps. They're always ready when they have a fight. You know, sometimes I've seen people at some of these development days, and they're having their first fight, and they get hit or they get kicked, and you can see in their face they're just like, what the fuck was that? Like, what am I getting myself into? But whenever I see someone from your gym fighting, they're always ready. Like they're primed, they're ready. It's like they know what to expect. They've been hit before. They're ready. So when they get into the ring, they know what to expect. There's no surprises, and it's very, very nice to watch. So that's one thing I tell a lot of people, is that, to be honest, your Lanna's gym is one of my actual favorites in terms of like aesthetically and style. I really like their style. It's very nice to watch.
Wow, thank you. That's a huge compliment, actually. Thank you.
No,
I'll tell Dad you said so. That's mate, awesome. He's a bit of a perfectionist.
Yeah, well, it shows too, man. It shows, because I tell a lot of people when I see fights, I'm like, you watch this person, man. Like, they'll probably have their first fight, but you watch, they'll be ready. And of course, it's nice, man. Even that young kid that's at your gym, Sam Gardner, I think he's only had a few fights, but he's impressive as well. He's another one that I noticed can fight out of either stance.
Yeah, he's a goer, Sam. I think a few people that have watched him fight, he's exactly what he does. He's an absolute goer. He's got a few things to work on, as we all do, but he's got a lot of natural talent, and he's got a work ethic like I haven't seen in anyone else. He's probably one of the only people that I've seen that Dad has actually had to tell to slow down and not train so much on the fight week.
Usually trainers are saying, kick harder, train harder.
Yeah, but no, he's telling him to slow down, which you don't hear very often.
Well, that's a good thing to have then, I guess.
Yeah, he's an awesome training partner. Yeah.
Now, when we last spoke at Muay Thai Grand Prix, where you fought Jason Scott and you got a nice little victory there, at weigh-in, you were drinking skim milk, and I asked you why you were drinking skim milk at weigh-in. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. A couple of people have asked me this, actually. It's funny. Ironically, I actually don't eat or consume any dairy products leading up to most of my fights. So it is a bit odd for dairy to be the first thing that I have off the scales, but there is science to it. So Dad can explain the science probably a bit better than I can. But essentially what it is, if you have water straight off the scales, it tends to flush straight through you.
Yeah.
But the way his dad's explained it to me is because your body sort of perceives it as a solid, it holds onto it and retains it longer. Mm-hmm. And because it retains it longer, it extracts the essential minerals, and you got your proteins and your sugars in your milk. But because it retains it a bit longer, it lines your stomach and all the other substances that you consume after, all your electrolytes and your waters and your glucose. So they essentially will break down a bit slower, so they won't go straight through you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like almost like getting bang for your buck. We've had someone before in the past who has had electrolytes first and then the skim milk.
Yeah.
And that was a complete mistake, because that just all comes straight back up.
Oh shit.
And they spewed it up. So, but every time, I've been doing it for years now, but every time it's half a litre of skim milk straight off the scales, and you feel good as gold afterwards. It really works. Yeah,
right. Well, not that I'll ever be cutting weight or anything, but I will take your word for it.
If you ever happen to. If you feel like doing it one day.
Hey, one thing I wanted to just go back with your gym. Your gym is on your property, yeah? So you've got your gym at your house, effectively. Yeah.
Well, it is at my parents' home. So Dad and I right now are actually isolating up at mine and Jet's house. So Jet and I have actually bought a house, and we're not living in it just yet. You know, we were renovating it, so Dad and I are living in this sort of almost finished house for a couple of weeks, just so the gym can keep running, because we didn't want to worry anybody. Obviously, coming home and having to isolate, and then there's people training where we're isolating, so that's probably not very fair. But yeah, it is at home. So essentially, they built onto the side of their house and set up this gym setup that's been there for. It's been there for about 10 years now, I think. Yeah, it would be getting close to a decade.
Yeah. Is it by invitation only? Like, given that it's your house, so do you not just let anyone off the street come in, or is it you let anyone come in?
Oh no, we're not like that. So it's not a big gym, obviously, so we don't, but it does get quite full. So we've actually got a lot of people training at the moment who just happen to be mates from school, and probably mostly local people and that sort of thing. But we definitely haven't turned anyone away, unless it happens to be, you know, so busy that we can't fit anyone else in, which has happened a couple of times. Unfortunately, it just gets too full. Yeah. But no, we don't sort of have an invite only system. That's not the case.
Okay, nice. So going back to the skim milk rehydration, from when you first started cutting weight up until now, what was the methods you used to use, or have you always used this method?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, the skim milk is something that I've always used because, I mean, I haven't always cut weight. So because when I started fighting, I was quite young. Dad's never cut weight from juniors. Yeah. So I'd always walk in on weight when I was younger. To be fair, I've only really started actually cutting weight for, say, my last 10 fights or so.
Oh, is that all? Just the last 10 fights, yeah.
Maybe. It was safe to say. Yeah. I mean, but so it's obviously changed since then because I've just needed to cut a bit more weight compared to when I was 15, 16.
Yeah.
But the methods are, well, recently I've actually started doing a bit more research and looking into your macronutrients and calorie counting.
Yep.
And just making sure you get what you need in not too many calories. So I used to just eat whatever I wanted, not whatever I wanted, but however much I wanted.
Yeah.
And I'd just load up on all the good food. So I mean, I'd always cut out gluten and wheat, and then processed sugars. So that was a given. That's always something I've done. But then I used to just eat as much as I want of just fruit and veggies and meats and salads, and just because, you know, it's healthy.
Yeah.
And but now that I've started measuring, I'm actually you do get a lot more bang for your buck, and you can find out what foods are sort of more calorie dense and less calorie dense, and what's better to have post training and pre training. And you just get a bit smarter about what to have and when. So, yeah. So that when it comes to fight week, I do water load.
Yep.
So I have 7 liters on Sunday. I do 7 and 7 for 3 days, and then when it comes to Wednesday, I'll do 3.5 liters and then 1 liter on the Thursday. So you make sure you're replenished and fully hydrated, so that you've got plenty of water there to sweat out on the day if need be.
Yeah.
And but because of water load, I do reduce sodium intake. So any excess salts or anything like that, I'll cut out fight week, just because it retains
the
moisture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And something that I experimented on leading up to this last fight was the carbohydrates fight week as well, because recently found out that carbohydrates well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's somewhere between 2 and 4 grams of water per gram of carbohydrate. So that's something that I tried. So I reduced the carbs and just did mainly fats and proteins leading up to fight week. But I don't know if I'll do it next time, because not that I felt flat, but the carbohydrates are a good source of fuel. So I think I'd prefer to have the fuel and still feel on point fight week, and then sort of have that water weight to cut on the Friday if need be. But yeah, it's all trial and error. You just have to find out what works for you.
And then do you cut the last couple of kilos just in the sauna?
Yeah, I don't use a sauna very often. I tend to put on a sweat and I'll just go for a light jog.
Yeah.
I tend to lose more weight if I sweat and sort of heat up from the inside out, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so usually I do about 1 kilo in half an hour. If I sort of give about that time frame, then that tends to give me enough time to cut weight. But yeah, I found what works for me is definitely starting on the treadmill at least, and then if I start to kind of just can't be bothered anymore, then I will probably sit in the sauna for a little bit, or I'll just walk on the treadie, or just make sure I keep sweating.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't use the sauna very often, to be honest.
No, that's good. That's not. I mean, a lot of people. I saw a post, I think, by the Combat Commission saying that they're going to ban people from cutting weight in saunas. I don't even.
Yeah, is that something to do with sweatsuits as well?
Yeah. I read. I don't want to go into full comment because I didn't actually read the entire thing. I saw bits of it, but I was just wondering how they're going to plan to police that. Are they going to have someone at every single sauna place in Perth on the weigh-in day? I don't know how they're going to do that, but that'll be...
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very hard to police, especially considering, some people might even have their own saunas, or... I mean, a lot of fighters have got their own sweatsuits as well, so...
I know fighters fighters have got saunas at their house, so I don't know how they're going to police that. But I know with these second... they've been doing these second mandatory weigh-ins on the day of the fights. I think they're using that as data to find out how much weight people cut and all that. But it'll be interesting to see what comes of that in the future, for sure. I'm also keen to talk about... I'm also keen to talk about your second fight with Tyler. To come back from that first fight in a TKO loss, and then you put it on him for the entire fight. You look like you were possessed by a demon in there. Physically, you looked great, but how was the mindset going into that fight, and how did you deal with that mentally, given what happened the first time?
Yeah, well, mentally, to be honest, I think it helped in sort of taking me to that next level. It was the right fight for the right time in my career.
Yeah.
So because we all know what happened the first time. I got caught in the third round, I think it was, and that was my first knockout and the only knockout on my record at the moment. So it was redemption for me, this second fight around.
Yeah. So
I think it was about 2.5 years later. So we both improved by then. Got stronger and got smarter, and because it was sort of redemption for me, I had this new level of motivation.
Yeah. And
this new level of motivation, it helped because I looked a lot more into recovery and into what was I going to say? Sort of into like a meal plan and like my correct nutrients and that sort of thing. So I just got a lot smarter.
Yep.
And obviously trained harder, so that I knew I was more than ready when it come around to that fight. And because we fought in the first time, we knew he had powerful kicks, as he does.
Yeah.
So the game plan was essentially just to check up and to check tight and make sure nothing gets through, but not just have a tight defense, but make sure he hurts himself on my defense.
Yeah.
So it was almost attacking him with my defense. Like it was I was still throwing my shots and still scoring my shots, and maybe that's why I lost. Maybe I didn't score enough, but essentially we just wanted to tighten up my defense, and I think it's got tighter since then. So even though I did lose, it wasn't a disappointing loss. Like I was proud of that fight,
100%,
and I was proud of sort of the steps taken and the progress that I made. So that was the perfect fight for me at that point in time.
Yeah, because when I chatted with Tyler after that fight, he just said like you had improved so much from that first fight, and I think you ended up you banged up his front leg, his right leg, pretty badly, which I noticed you.
So it worked.
He was hobbling out the back. Like once he got out of the ring and that adrenaline dump worn off, he was hobbling. And I noticed that's what you were doing with Albert too. That was your plan with the Southpaws, is to smash that front leg, because it doesn't actually get hit a lot. It's like for an Orthodox fighter getting their back leg hit, it only takes a few solid kicks, and it's not as conditioned as our front leg.
Yeah. Well, with Albert too, we had realised he doesn't necessarily check an awful lot. I mean, he checked a few of mine, but if I was to chip away at one of those legs, then I could take away his spring. Yeah. Because we all know he's got that real good fast switch muscle fibre. He can throw a shot from essentially anywhere. So if I could chip away at that leg, it was going to be over 5-3s. So if I could just chip away at that lead leg, then I could just take away his reaction time. And our game was to take his range and use those knees. I've been working for so long on my knees, and just for them to come through like that, I was really proud of myself, actually. Yeah, I've been working for years on my knees, and for them to finally actually come through and be effective, I was more stoked with that.
Yeah, because to be honest, man, I had to actually watch the replay about 4 or 5 times, because I think he got you with one really good knee before you got him in the end. But I actually had to rewatch that, because when you'd done that first knee, which you timed perfectly, and then you did the 2 body shots on the way down, at first I thought you'd need him straight in the solar plex or in the sternum, and I had to watch that about 4 or 5 times to actually realise, no, you actually got him flush on the chin on the way down. So that was pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's so he actually, the people that have watched the replay, there's one out there it's a little bit longer, and you can see Albert throws this jumping switch knee, and it does clip me just right on the chin. Yeah. And I kind of smiled at him, and I was like, "Oh, you cheeky bugger, that come out of nowhere." And but so I set up this rear knee, and I ripped it straight through, and that landed. And he sort of gave me a little shake of the head and sort of tried to say, that didn't do anything, but I could see. So that's where the two body shots follow up from, because I could see. And when he did start to go down, you take the opportunity, and that's when that last knee come through, and it did clip him on the chin on the way down.
Yeah, no, and at least he's all right. He's a really nice dude. I've actually had the pleasure of chatting with him in the past as well.
No, he is a really nice guy. I have all sorts of respect for Albert. Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that he was good after that fight too. So he was. It was a little bit concerning. He was out for a few minutes, but he's okay. Yeah, which is the main thing.
Definitely, mate. And with your dad as your trainer, he probably knows you better than anyone. Is it sometimes hard to distinguish the difference between father and trainer, as no relationship is ever 100% perfect?
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know any different, to be honest. So he's always been my coach, and I've got all sorts of trust. Maybe being my dad, helps with that, but I trust his perspective, and I trust his eye, and we're always learning off each other. So he's always got something for me to work on. He's always picking on my flaws. Like I said earlier, he's a bit of a perfectionist. Yeah. So I've got all sorts of flaws that we're always working on. But we're lucky. We actually see eye to eye on a lot of things. And because of that, I trust his eye, I trust his perspective, and I think I've fought maybe 2 or 3 times with him not in my corner, and it's weird. It's really weird. So he's always there to give me instruction, and he always knows exactly what to do. And yeah, I couldn't think of having anyone else in my corner.
No, I bet you probably feel a little bit lost when he wasn't in your corner, because you always have that rock there. Yeah. Well, I think the biggest difference was all the instructions that I get between rounds. Yeah.
I think this is going back to probably to Arafura, and there was it might have only been a 1 minute break, but it was probably the longest 1 minute break ever, because I just wasn't, not that Richard Walsh wasn't giving me any instructions. Like, he was actually quite good, but it was so different.
Yeah, no, 100%. I understand where you come from there. Hey, one thing I wanted to ask you: have you got any? What are your other goals and achievements that you'd like to achieve in a sport before it's all said and done?
Yeah, well, essentially, I just want to take this as far as I can go. So, I now that I've got the WBC Australian title, I've got to defend that once before I can fight for the Oceanic. But the Diamond belt would be awesome, or even bigger again. To be honest, the WMC world title, that's a dream. That's something that I'd love to fight for.
Well, mate, you keep going the way you're going, and it's going to be very, very possible in the future.
Thank you.
Now, one thing before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening in ISO, IFMA just got recognised as an Olympic sport. I know you and your family are very much involved with IFMA. Give me your thoughts on what that means for you and potentially MTA or MTWA.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I actually want to congratulate the whole WMC crew for the IOC recognition. So there is a huge criteria to get Olympic recognition, and they've been working on it for years. I mean, I guess I might say it more because Mum is on the IFMA board, but they've been working on it for such a long time, putting so much work and effort into this. I just want to congratulate them. It's awesome. It's essentially paving the way for the future generations. So it doesn't mean that Muay Thai is a medal sport just yet, but it does have IOC recognition. So essentially, it's that next step that we need to get Muay Thai into the Olympics. So what it means for MTA and MTWA is that in the future, if the way it keeps going, then they might be fighting in the Olympics.
Would that be a dream of yours?
That would be amazing. If I can fight in the Olympics, that would be amazing.
Hey, tell me, how do you go? Obviously, I'm guessing you probably don't enjoy it, but how do you go adapting from fighting as a professional with no pads to fighting with the Arafura and IFMA and all that sort of stuff where it's all padded? How have you got to adapt and change between the two?
Yeah, it is different. It is really different. So probably the most annoying thing is the head guard.
Yeah.
But because you are fighting, up to 5 times, sometimes even 6 times, I think, in a week, you just appreciate the few less bumps and bruises that you get. Yeah. But because of the pads, it does have to change your fighting style a little bit. So you do have to be more active. So it is more of a point scoring system. But that doesn't mean that the effectiveness and the power of your shots can be sacrificed at all. So you've got to have the work rate and you've got to have the effectiveness. So you come across a lot of world-class athletes at IFMA. Yeah. There's a lot of really good fighters there. And I think that's where a lot of my experiences come from, to be honest. A lot of my biggest growth has probably come from these IFMA events.
Yeah.
Because you honestly have to work your ass off for these events. But it is a little bit different to your professional fights, like the one on the weekend. So without the pads, it is probably a bit more, what should I say? It's not more relaxed, but you do have to pick your shots a bit more.
Yeah.
You have to be a bit more accurate, and you've sort of got that little bit more leniency because you are almost a smaller target without your head guard, without your shin guards. You've kind of got that little bit less mass.
Who would you say, in your say professional opinion, and who would you say for the men are the top countries to fight? Like they say, people say like the Russians are quite strong, Belarus is quite strong. Who would you say, in your opinion, because you're involved in it, you watch a lot of it, who would you say are the top countries to watch out for?
Yeah. Well, like you said, actually, a lot of the Russian countries are really strong.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but they're headstrong, which you need in IFMA, because as soon as you start getting to sort of like the fourth and fifth fight, you start to get a bit more rough down. It does come down to that mental toughness.
Yeah.
So Russia tend to be up there quite often. Ukraine tend to be up there quite often. Who else? Thailand do tend to be up there quite often.
Yeah.
Not saying that they're sort of mentally weaker, but they don't tend to be as headstrong as some of the European countries.
Yeah.
So I would probably say Ukraine would be up there.
Where do you see Australia, like top, middle, bottom at the moment and in the past?
To be honest, Australia are up there. We've actually got a lot of really strong athletes. I would say probably if you're going out of the countries, most of the time we are in the top 5.
That's a good. That's not too bad, is it?
Yeah. No, Australia, they do have a strong team. We do have a strong team, I should say. We need to get to another IFMA event. COVID's just mucking us all up.
Oh man, it's ruining everything.
It is.
Oh mate. Well, man, it's been pretty sweet talking to you, and I've really enjoyed it. Before I let you go, have you got any fights lined up on the horizon that you're able to tell us about at the moment?
Yeah, well, after my last fight, actually, Chris from Destiny, he, I'm not sure if it was a passing comment or something that he's actually hoping to set up, but he wants to put on a 4-man at my weight, and that'll be sort of end of October. So hopefully that goes ahead. I'd love to do a 4-man.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who else would be in it, but yeah, that's probably the only thing that I've got my eyes set on at the moment.
And no doubt you'll be back at MTGP at some point, because let's just say, mate, you're a regular on that show now. It's not really a show without Damon Nelson, is it?
Yeah. When is the next Grand Prix, actually? That's coming up shortly.
It's a road to Grand Prix. So it's sort of I think you've got a couple of or a lot of pro bouts, but there's also a lot of amateur bouts, I think, too, as well. But that's in 27th, I think. Yep. End of this month, I think it's coming up.
Yep.
But no doubt you'll be on one of these.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's something else to keep my eyes on. Definitely,
mate, because you're one of my little fan favourites there. Now, before I let you head, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Before I let you go, if people want to follow you, contact you, stay up to date with your fights, etc., how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, I'll just do the Instagram and the Facebook, to be honest, mate. I tend to keep that updated with all my fight stuff. So I don't, a lot of people probably notice I don't post much training or much social media footage, but I do post any of the sort of the promo stuff that comes up when I do have fights coming up. So that's the best place to go, just Instagram and Facebook. So I actually noticed that WBC kept tagging this other account. It must be an old account, but it's Damon Nelson 5. and it's not the right one.
Is it Damon Nelson 2?
Damon Nelson 2 is the way to go. Yep, that's the one. That's the one.
And mate, last but not least, anyone that you want to thank or give a shout out to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the sponsor, Richard from Ring Sport, he's been sponsoring me for almost 5 years now, always keeping my gear up to scratch, which is awesome. So a massive shout out to Richard, to Dad, the coach, for all the time and effort that he puts in. It's amazing. I can't thank him enough. And the guys at the gym too, all my training partners, they do a lot of work as well. So just training alongside them, I just want to say thank you to them and my friends and family for all the support. And a shout out to Chris as well from Destiny for giving me this opportunity to fight for the Australian title, something that I've wanted to do for quite some time now. But thanks for having me on, Chris. That was awesome.
Well, mate, you certainly grabbed that opportunity with two hands, and it was great to see you in action last week, man. I sort of started getting my Muay Thai mojo back when I see fight shows, and then when they get canned, I get all sad.
That's it.
So, mate, it's been a pleasure talking. To you. Thanks for giving me your time, and no doubt I'll probably hopefully see you at the next fight show, or if not, the next MTGP. So thank you for your time, brother, and hope you enjoy the rest of your ISO and it goes quick for you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you, Mudzi. I appreciate it. Thanks for the interview.
Thanks, mate. I'll catch you at the next fight show.
Cheers. We'll see you there.
Answer and explain to me the history. I had to throw a vicious knee. I got a passion for the art of 8 limbs. I'm just asking from the heart. So as I conclude this interview, thanks so much for sitting through. Loved all the fighters and the folks that listen. This for you.